The bedroom door slams so hard, the family photos on the hallway wall rattle. 16-year-old Sarah Martinez presses her back against it, tears streaming down her face as she screams the words that will haunt her father forever. "I hate you. I wish you weren't my dad." Outside her door, David Martinez, the man who taught her to ride a bike, who stayed up all night when she had pneumonia, who called her his little angel, collapses against the wall as his world shatters. That was 8 months ago. They haven't spoken since. What began as the most beautiful father-daughter relationship had become a war zone of silence, slammed doors, and two hearts breaking in the same house. David stares at the kitchen table where Sarah's empty chair sits like an accusation. She eats her meals in her room now, leaves for school before he wakes up, and treats him like he doesn't exist. The man who once knew every detail of his daughter's day now doesn't even know if she's sleeping at night. If you've ever felt your family falling apart, this story will give you hope. Like this video and subscribe to our channel if you believe in Mary's power to heal families. To create a spiritual chain of prayer for all broken families, write HEAL in the comments below. Let's unite our faith and ask Mary to intercede for every family watching this. Sarah's mother, Maria, watches helplessly as the two people she loves most destroy each other with their silence. She sees David leaving Sarah's favorite cookies outside her door, only to find them untouched hours later. She witnesses Sarah crying quietly when she thinks no one's looking, clutching the teddy bear her father won for her at the county fair just 2 years ago. The house that once echoed with laughter and inside jokes now feels like a tomb. What Maria doesn't know yet is that her daughter lies awake every night, wondering if she's gone too far to ever come back. Sarah stares at her ceiling, remembering how safe she felt in her father's arms, how he used to call her his guardian angel and promise he'd never let anything hurt her. But he broke that promise in the worst possible way, and now pride and pain have built walls so high between them that neither knows how to climb over. David has tried everything. Family counselors who couldn't break through Sarah's stone-faced silence. Heartfelt letters she tears up without reading, even reaching out to her friends' parents for advice. Nothing works. His little girl has become a stranger who shares his DNA but won't share his space. The man who once felt like the most important person in his daughter's world now feels invisible in his own home. Little did any of them know that in just 8 weeks, the Virgin Mary would orchestrate the most beautiful family miracle they'd ever witnessed. But first, Maria would have to reach the point where human solutions felt impossible, where only divine intervention could bridge the chasm tearing her family apart. That moment was coming sooner than she expected, to understand how two people who loved each other so deeply could become strangers. You have to go back to the night that changed everything. Sarah was 14, and her best friend Emma had been killed in a car accident. David found his daughter sobbing in her room, her whole world shattered by the loss of the girl who'd been like a sister to her. Through her tears, Sarah begged her father for one thing. "Promise me you'll never miss Emma's memorial service. Promise me you'll be there when I speak about her. I can't do this without you, Daddy." David looked into his daughter's red-rimmed eyes and made the promise that would later destroy them both. "I'll be there, Angel. Nothing could keep me away, I promise." But life has a cruel way of testing our promises. The morning of Emma's memorial, David's company faced a crisis that threatened hundreds of jobs. His boss demanded he fly to Chicago immediately for emergency meetings. David faced an impossible choice: save his career and the livelihoods of his employees, or keep his promise to his broken-hearted daughter. He chose what he thought was the greater good, believing Sarah would understand when she was older. She didn't understand. Standing at the podium in a packed church, scanning the crowd for her father's face, Sarah felt something die inside her when she realized he wasn't coming. Her voice cracked as she delivered her speech about loyalty and friendship to a room full of people, knowing the one person who'd promised to be there had abandoned her in her darkest hour. Maria watched from the front row as her daughter's eyes went cold, the exact moment Sarah stopped trusting her father. What followed were 8 months of David's desperate attempts to bridge a chasm he'd created with the best intentions. He tried explaining about the work crisis, about the families who would have lost their homes if the company had failed. Sarah's response was always the same silence that cut deeper than any scream. She'd learned to look right through him, as if he were invisible. You see, David didn't just miss a memorial service. He shattered his daughter's belief that she was his priority. Every family dinner became a minefield of tension. Every attempt at conversation met with Sarah's polite but distant responses that felt worse than anger. She'd answer his questions with single words, never meeting his eyes, treating him like a stranger who happened to live in her house. Maria tried everything to broker peace between them. Family therapy sessions where Sarah sat stone-faced and David broke down apologizing. Special dinners where both father and daughter picked at their food in deafening silence. Birthday celebrations that felt more like funerals. Nothing worked. The harder David tried to reconnect, the further Sarah retreated into herself. Now, 8 months later, David knelt on the floor of Sarah's childhood bedroom, surrounded by photos of happier times. Father and daughter at baseball games, camping trips, Christmas mornings when she'd wake up before dawn to show him what Santa brought. He pressed his face into his hands and whispered the prayer that would change everything. Please, God, I've lost my little girl. If you're listening, I need help. I need a miracle. Maria Martinez had been a devoted daughter of the Virgin Mary since childhood, but she'd never needed her Heavenly Mother's help as desperately as she did now. Standing in her kitchen at 2 a.m., listening to her husband's muffled sobs coming from Sarah's room down the hall, Maria knew human efforts had failed. Her family was dying, and only divine intervention could resurrect the love that once filled their home. She climbed the stairs to her bedroom and knelt before the small shrine she'd built years ago, a beautiful statue of Our Lady of Guadalupe, surrounded by flickering votive candles, worn rosary beads, and a faded photo of her own mother. Maria's hands trembled as she lit 9 candles, beginning what would become the most important novena of her life. "Blessed Mother," she whispered, tears already flowing. "You know the pain of watching your child suffer. You stood at the foot of the cross and witnessed your son's agony. Please, Mary, my family is on its own cross right now. My husband is dying inside, and my daughter's heart has turned to stone. I don't know how to reach either of them anymore." Maria opened her worn prayer book to the Memorare, the prayer her own mother had taught her decades ago. Her voice broke as she recited the ancient words, "Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thy intercession, was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, I fly unto thee, O Virgin of Virgins, my mother." Night after night, Maria prayed this novena, begging the Mother of Families to heal her broken home. She offered her own suffering for her family's restoration, promising to share their miracle story if Mary would only intervene. "You are the one who brought families together at Cana," Maria prayed. "Please bring my family together again. Show them how to forgive, how to love each other the way you love all of us." What Maria didn't know was that her prayers were already rising like incense before the throne of God, and the Queen of Heaven was preparing to answer in ways more beautiful than Maria could imagine. The first sign came on the 7th night of the novena. Maria was finishing her evening prayers when she heard an unusual sound from Sarah's room. Not crying, but the soft whisper of movement. Through the thin walls, she could hear drawers opening and closing, as if Sarah was searching for something. The next morning, Maria found something that made her heart leap with hope. There, on Sarah's nightstand, sat the little white rosary beads that had been Sarah's first communion gift, beads that had been buried in the bottom drawer for over a year. Sarah had taken them out and placed them where she could see them. She hadn't thrown them away, hadn't hidden them again. For the first time in 8 months, something sacred had found its way back into Sarah's space. But what the Virgin Mary planned to do with that small act of openness would exceed every prayer Maria had whispered in the darkness. The Virgin Mary's plan began to unfold with the gentle precision that only heaven could orchestrate. 3 days after Sarah placed her rosary on the nightstand, David was rushing to catch the elevator at his office building when something impossible happened. The doors were closing and he called out to wait, but the person inside didn't hear him. As the elevator disappeared, David noticed the emergency stairs door had been propped open, something that never happened in this security-conscious building. Taking the stairs turned out to be exactly what Mary had planned. On the 7th floor landing, David found a janitor struggling with a heavy box. Without thinking, David stopped to help, and as they lifted it together, dozens of photographs scattered across the floor, family pictures from the building's employee newsletter over the years. David's breath caught as he saw it, a photo of himself and Sarah from the company picnic 3 years ago, both of them laughing as she tried to steal his hot dog. "Your daughter?" the janitor asked, noticing David's tears. "Beautiful family. Whatever happened between you two, it's never too late to fix it. I know." That janitor, David would later learn, had been estranged from his own daughter for 5 years before reconciling just months before she died. But David didn't know any of this yet. He just knew that seeing Sarah's joyful face in that photo awakened something in his heart he thought had died. Meanwhile, Mary was working on Sarah too. During lunch at school, Sarah's friend accidentally knocked over her water bottle, soaking Sarah's backpack. As Sarah emptied everything to dry it, she found something that made her freeze. A handwritten note from her father, tucked into a pocket she'd forgotten existed. It was from 2 years ago, a silly little message he'd hidden in her lunch. "Have a magical day, my guardian angel. Remember, Daddy loves you bigger than the universe. P.S. Don't trade your sandwich for cookies again." For the first time in 8 months, Sarah smiled, really smiled, at something connected to her father. But as quickly as the warmth came, the walls went back up. She crumpled the note and threw it away, angry at herself for feeling anything toward the man who'd broken his promise. Mary's intervention was just beginning. If you want to see more amazing family miracles, subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. But resistance came from both sides. David found himself walking past Sarah's room more often, hoping to hear her voice. But every time he approached her door, memories of that terrible fight came flooding back. Sarah's words, "I hate you. I wish you weren't my dad," echoed in his mind, convincing him he'd lost her forever. Sarah felt the change too, and it terrified her. She'd worked so hard to build walls around her heart, to protect herself from being hurt again. These strange coincidences, these unwanted memories of good times with her father, felt like attacks on the armor she'd built. She began staying later at school, avoiding home altogether. The crisis point came on a rainy Thursday evening when both father and daughter reached for the same photo album in the living room, the one filled with memories they'd both been afraid to face. Their hands touched the photo album at exactly the same moment. Both David and Sarah froze, staring at each other across the coffee table like strangers who'd accidentally collided in a crowded street. For 8 months, they'd perfected the art of avoiding each other in their own home, but here they were, reaching for the same memories at the same time. Sarah's first instinct was to pull away, to retreat to her room and slam the door. But something held her there. David started, his voice barely a whisper. "I know," Sarah said. And those 2 words, the first she'd spoken directly to him in 8 months, hung in the air like a prayer finally answered. What happened next could only be explained as divine intervention. As they both hesitated over the album, a gust of wind from somewhere, though every window in the house was closed, flipped it open to a specific page. There, staring up at them, was the photo they both needed to see. Sarah at age 7, asleep in her hospital bed after her appendectomy, with David curled up in the uncomfortable chair beside her, his hand protectively covering hers. "You never left," Sarah whispered, staring at the photo. "The whole time I was sick, you never left my side." David's eyes filled with tears as the memory flooded back. "I couldn't leave you. I promised I'd be there, and I was." The weight of his words hit them both simultaneously. He had kept that promise, just like he'd kept so many others over the years. It was only Emma's memorial where he'd failed her, and for the first time, Sarah began to see the difference between one broken promise and a lifetime of kept ones. "I was so scared that night," Sarah continued, her voice breaking. "But when I woke up and saw you there, I knew everything would be okay. You looked so uncomfortable in that tiny chair, but you wouldn't leave. I would never leave you when you needed me," David said, and then the words he'd been holding back for 8 months poured out. "Sarah, I know I broke my promise about Emma's service. I know I hurt you when you needed me most. But please don't let one failure erase every time I was there. Please don't let it erase how much I love you." Something shifted in Sarah's eyes, a crack in the ice that had frozen her heart for so long. She looked at her father, really looked at him, and saw what her anger had hidden from her. He was broken too. The man she'd idolized for 14 years hadn't just disappointed her. He'd been living with the guilt of disappointing her every single day since. "Daddy," she whispered, the first time she'd called him that in 8 months. "I've missed you so much." And then, as if the Virgin Mary herself was guiding their movements, father and daughter reached across the coffee table toward each other. What would happen when their hands touched would be the moment their family began to heal in ways more beautiful than Maria had ever dared to pray for. When their hands touched across that coffee table, 8 months of pain melted away in an instant. David and Sarah both began crying, not the bitter tears of hurt they'd shed alone, but the healing tears that only come when love conquers pride. Without a word, Sarah stood up and walked around the table, and David opened his arms to receive the daughter he thought he'd lost forever. "I'm so sorry, baby girl." David sobbed into Sarah's hair as she collapsed into his embrace. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there when you needed me most." "I'm sorry too, Daddy," Sarah whispered against his shoulder. "I'm sorry I said I hated you." "I never meant it. I was just so hurt, and I didn't know how to tell you that I needed you to choose me over everything else just once." "You are my choice," David said, pulling back to look into his daughter's eyes that finally looked at him with love instead of stone. "You have always been my choice. I just did a terrible job of showing you that when it mattered most." They held each other and talked through their tears for over an hour, sharing 8 months of stored-up words. Sarah told her father about the nightmares she'd had after Emma died, how she'd needed him there to feel safe enough to speak about her friend. David explained about the impossible choice he'd faced, how he'd agonized over missing her speech, how he'd replayed that decision every single day since. "I thought about quitting my job that morning," David confessed. "But I convinced myself you'd understand later, that you'd be proud I helped save other people's jobs. I was so wrong." "You weren't completely wrong," Sarah said, surprising him. "Emma would have understood. She always said you were the best dad she knew because you cared about everyone, not just us. I was just too hurt to see it that way." Maria found them like this when she came home from evening mass. Father and daughter curled up together on the couch, Sarah's head on David's shoulder, like when she was little, both of them peacefully asleep. Maria's hands flew to her mouth as she realized what she was witnessing. Her novena prayers had been answered beyond her wildest dreams. But the Virgin Mary's orchestration went deeper than Maria initially understood. As she quietly approached to wake them for dinner, Maria noticed something extraordinary on the coffee table. The photo album was open to a different page now, a picture of their family at church on Sarah's confirmation day, with Father Miguel blessing them and a statue of Mary visible in the background. It was as if the Blessed Mother was signing her work, showing Maria exactly who had healed their family. The transformation was immediate and undeniable. Neighbors noticed David and Sarah walking together to the corner store the next morning, laughing about something. Sarah's teachers remarked that she seemed lighter, more at peace. David's co-workers were amazed by his renewed energy and joy. Most importantly, Maria watched her family come alive again, dinner conversations filled with laughter, Sarah showing her father TikTok videos, David helping with homework like old times. Their house once again echoed with the sounds of a family that loved each other deeply. The Virgin Mary had not just healed a relationship, she had resurrected their home. 6 months have passed since that miraculous night when the Virgin Mary healed the Martinez family. And the transformation continues to unfold in ways that still bring tears to Maria's eyes. David and Sarah's relationship isn't just restored, it's stronger than it ever was before their trial. They've learned to communicate with a depth and honesty that many fathers and daughters never achieve, forged in the fire of almost losing each other forever. Sarah now texts her father throughout the day, sharing funny memes and asking for advice about everything from homework to friendships. David has learned to prioritize differently, understanding that being present for the small moments creates trust for the big ones. When Sarah's boyfriend broke up with her last month, there was no question about who she called first. David dropped everything to drive to her school, and they spent the afternoon talking over ice cream, something that would have been impossible during their 8 months of silence. The miracle has rippled outward in beautiful ways. Sarah's friends often comment on how lucky she is to have such a close relationship with her father, and several have asked David for advice about their own family problems. Maria watches her husband light up whenever someone asks about his daughter, sees how he treasures every moment of connection after knowing what it feels like to lose it. Most remarkably, the Martinez family has become a beacon of hope for other broken families in their parish. Maria has shared their story with countless mothers who thought their families were beyond repair, and she's watched the Virgin Mary work similar miracles in home after home. The Blessed Mother seems to specialize in what human wisdom considers impossible, taking relationships that appear completely destroyed and weaving them back together with threads of grace stronger than what existed before. What this miracle teaches us is profound. The Virgin Mary doesn't just heal bodies, she heals hearts. She doesn't just mend wounds, she mends the sacred bonds that make us family. In a world where families are torn apart by misunderstandings, pride, and broken promises, Mary stands ready to be the bridge that brings loved ones back together. Her maternal heart aches for every parent who has lost a child's trust, every child who feels abandoned by those who should protect them. If you're watching this story with a broken heart, wondering if your family situation is too damaged for divine intervention, take hope from David and Sarah's journey. The Virgin Mary is still working miracles in families today. She's still orchestrating mysterious coincidences, opening hearts that seemed permanently closed, and whispering forgiveness into ears that have forgotten how to hear love. Your family's healing might not take 8 weeks like the Martinez family. It might happen in 8 days, or 8 months, or 8 years. But Mary's love for families never gives up, never stops working, never considers any relationship too broken to restore. She who stood faithfully by her son, even in his darkest hour, understands the pain of watching family suffer, and she longs to transform that suffering into supernatural joy. Have you experienced Mary's healing in your family? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more miraculous family healing stories. Together, let's witness how the Mother of all families continues to work miracles of love in our broken world.